Hi friends, today I'm going to be showing you how you can use watercolor palettes to add color to your work and also how to treat your paintbrush with the proper care. We are going to need a warm color watercolor palette, a cool color watercolor palette, a water bucket that you're going to share with your table mates as well, and then also maybe a paper towel. You might not need that, but you might find it handy, and then a paintbrush of some sort. We're going to be using around this size today. These are similar brushes here. You'll probably be using one of these. So I'm going to start by painting in everything except for the sky. For this project, I'm going to start with the branches, the leaves, the parrot, and I'm going to try to keep Miss Paintbrush's hair looking absolutely beautiful. I also want to keep my watercolor palettes looking really nice. So these are all brand new colors. They have not been mixed together. If I don't wash my brush out properly, I can really mess up other colors. Like if I leave red in my brush and I dip it in the yellow, what's going to happen? I'm not going to have a pure yellow anymore. And that might not be good for me, or it definitely won't be good for me, and it definitely won't be good for my friends. So I'm going to start with some water in my brush. I'm going to just load my brush up with water. I do not do this. I never do the woodpecker because that can splatter water on my paper. That can splatter paint on other people's papers, and it's just a really annoying noise. So you want to swishy, 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 and wipe, wipe when you need to get water off. But I just need to dip and get some water. I'm going to choose my first color, and I'm going to tickle, 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 tickle the tempera. I'm gonna tickle, tickle, tickle this watercolor. And I've got some yellow on my brush, and I like to tickle the sides. And while I've got this on the tip of my brush, I'm gonna very carefully paint inside the beak. Okay. And then if I want anything else to be yellow on my paper, I can go ahead and take care of that. This is the brighter yellow, or this is kind of more of like a cheese yellow. This one's a little bit brighter. I'm gonna let some colors blend in my artwork, so I'm gonna put some yellow on some of these leaves as I'm going. I want it to look like the leaves are turning colors. Okay. All right, I'm gonna clean this yellow out of my brush, swishy, 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 and wipe, wipe. All right, so now I'm gonna get some green. I can choose one of these greens here, tickle, 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 tickle. And our paint palettes won't look this new forever because these paints last a long time if we take care of them, but eventually there's gonna be missing spots where the paint is like looking kind of old, and like maybe we need to get a new one, but we're gonna use all this paint up before we get a new paint palette, or a new block of paint, a new cake of paint to put in there. All right, I can also mix other colors in as I'm going. I'm gonna get some of this darker green, see how that looks. Might put some of that over here on the side. The more water that I add to my paint, the lighter it's going to get. So I have a good bit of water in my brush right now. If I want to get rid of some of that water, I can blot it on my paper towel here. And then that's gonna cause my color to be a little bit darker. When wet paint touches wet paint, it's going to mix and blend, like the yellow and the green touched here, and they mix together because they were both wet. Now right here, my yellow is kind of dry already, but if I want those colors to blend, I'm gonna wash my brush out a little bit, wipe it on the side, and I can put just a little bit of water there, and now the yellow kind of blends in with my green. All right, I'm gonna get some more green and finish up these leaves. All right, friends, now I want to show you a little bit more about the paintbrush. So this paintbrush is looking pretty good, right? The hair is nice and neat. If you'll notice, whenever I was painting like this. I'm dancing on my tippy toes. Okay, so Miss Paintbrush, the bottom of the hair is what's touching the paper. Okay, if I were to take my paintbrush, and I'm just going to grab a different one here. If I were to take my paintbrush and I were to constantly lay it down like this, and I were to constantly fan out these pieces, then our paintbrushes would get destroyed. If I'm doing this, if this part, the gold or the silver part on the brush is touching my paper all the time, and I'm doing like this and I'm swirling around, watch what's gonna happen to this brush. Okay, and a lot of people, I see them doing it over here too. They'll get their paint and they're like this, trying to get the paint up out of the tempera paint or out of the watercolor paint. All right, and then look at what starts happening to the hair. Okay. Okay, this is looking really, really bad. And I'll show you a little bit over here. So constant spinning and bending and doing like that. Look at this brush now. Okay, this brush is no longer usable. Now you might be thinking, Miss Raven, why did you destroy that brush? But I wanted to show you guys what happens when we don't do the right thing. So now this brush is all messed up and another artist is not gonna want this. You're not gonna be able to stay in the lines with this. It's gonna be a mess. So please be careful with our paintbrushes and treat them well. We wanna have enough paintbrushes for all of our artists to use. Sometimes Miss Raven can get them to go back a little bit like the way they were, but it will not go back perfectly if I consistently do that and I consistently scrub. And sometimes people get frustrated. They're trying to get their paint and they just can't get it, and it winds up looking like a rake or a fan when they're done. That's not cool. All right, so let me continue using a brush that works well because I've treated it well. You may find that whenever you get your colors, I'm going to tickle some of this pretty purple color over here. You may find that whenever you get your colors that you're starting to paint and your color looks a little bit streaky and it doesn't seem to be going on very well. If that's the case, you need a little bit more water in your brush. So I'm going to dip just a little bit of water, and when I do that, that tiny little bit of water causes my paint to go on a little bit more smoothly. Look at the difference. A little bit of water in my brush, and then tickle, 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 tickle. And I'm only on the toes of the paintbrush. I'm not gonna make it look like this poor little guy over here, okay? We're gonna keep that brush as our poor example of what not to do. Sometimes Miss Raven has to show you what not to do so that you'll know that it's not okay. Sometimes people do it on accident if they don't know ahead of time. So I want my parrot's body and head to match colors, but I want to see a little bit of color mixing. So I'm going to stop right here, wash out my brush, swishy, swishy, wipe, wipe, and I'm going to get another color. I'm going to tickle this blue right here. It's a pretty bright blue. I'm going to put this over here on the side and then come into here. Okay? And so now I've got a pretty mix of this red violet into blue because I let those two colors mix. Now I want to pick a color that contrasts right here for the parrot's eye. Sometimes you're going to want to pick colors that are different than the color that's right beside them so that things stand out. So I'm going to do some orange here, and I'm barely touching my paper. I'm carefully using the tip of my paintbrush. And I also hold my paintbrush like I hold a pencil. And I'm just going to continue to work until I get all these colors filled in. If I don't want colors to mix together, I make sure I don't put them together whenever they're wet. Because if I do, that's the way to get them to mix together. You're going to need brown for your tree branches, but you don't have brown. So you can mix brown using orange and blue. First I put orange down on the branch and then washed my brush out, and then I put blue right on top. And then I washed my brush out again. I can mix the colors right on my paper, but not in the paint palette because that will mess up the colors for everyone else. Alright, so now we filled everything in with our watercolor palettes, but the background still needs a little bit of color. We are going to be using a paint stick for our background, and this paint dries pretty quickly. So we can choose one color of paint stick and color in the background. It can be any color that you would like.